Hi, how do we use this time of quarantine to cultivate new virtues so that when we come out of quarantine, we are people that are better than the people that went into this time of quarantine? So, I'm Reverend Emmanuel, and as you can see, we are 2.5 months into this quarantine, and my hair is all long because I've not had a chance to go and cut my hair. But the question I want to talk about is how can we be people that use this time of quarantine in a way that helps us to improve and become people with deeper faith? How can we develop and cultivate new virtues in this time of quarantine where we are separated from the people that we normally interact with, from the activities that we normally do, and we seem to have more free time for ourselves than we normally did. So, the virtue that I want to talk about cultivating today is the virtue of prayerful solitude or prayer in solitude. So, when we look at the Bible in Luke chapter 5 verse 16, uh, Luke says talks about Jesus. He says Jesus frequently withdrew to the wilderness to pray. Jesus frequently withdrew to the wilderness to pray. So why did he do that? What's the significance of going into the wilderness, of separating from people, separating from all the activities that was there around the city, and going to the wilderness? Um, Henry Nouwen is a Catholic priest, and he has a very interesting statement about the idea of solitude, about the idea of separating from the normal spaces that we are at to be in a space of solitude. He says a life without solitude becomes a life that is destructive. Why? Because when we don't have that space of solitude, he says we cling to all the actions that we do as a way of self-identification that ultimately makes us possessive and defensive if that self-identification becomes threatened in some way. Right? So there is a lot going on in that statement. Let's kind of step back and unpack that a little bit. So when he talks about clinging to an activity or an action as self-identification, what he's talking about is where is our identity? Where is our identity ultimately resting? What is the image that we want to portray to the people around us so that they see us in a particular way? Earlier, while I was working in software, that was my identity, right? I was saying, okay, I'm a software programmer, I'm a software project manager. So if I were to find all of my satisfaction in being that software programmer or software project manager, then I was finding my identity in that work, instead of trying to find my identity in being a beloved child of God, right? So this is where the idea of solitude becomes important. When I'm not in a place where I'm separated from these activities, separated from the things that surround me, then I will be tempted to find my identity in those activities, right? So this is why going to the wilderness means we have this space of quietness, have this space of solitude, where we separate away from the regular activities that we do to pay attention to God, to listen to God. In fact, in Matthew 6:6, Jesus talks about when you pray, go into your inner house, in your secret place, and pray in secret, right? So that's a different way of prayer. Prayer of solitude, prayer in solitude is not just asking God, God give me this, God give me that. Prayer in solitude kind of turns the lens inward and it asks, God, what do I need to renounce so that I find my identity in being your beloved child? What is an aspect of my life where I'm putting maybe too much identity in something that I do or too much identity in a relationship that I have? What are things that I need to let go of, to renounce, so that I can find my ultimate identity in being a child of God, right? So that's what happens in this prayer of solitude. And Jesus often does this, like anytime he does a big miracle, especially when he feeds the 5,000, which Mark 6 talks about, Matthew 14 talks about, immediately after he feeds the 5,000 people, and people are like, hey, we have the great miracle worker who can feed immense amounts of people, Jesus withdraws from there, goes to a place of solitude to pray to his Father in heaven. Right? So let me give you an example. So over this quarantine time, I've been trying to take more space of complete quietness, not listening to anything on music, not looking at the phone, not looking at TV or any of this other stuff, and I have this time of complete solitude. And in this prayer of solitude, the question that I ask God is, God, what do I need to renounce? What do I need to let go so that my identity becomes deepened in my relationship with you, right? And as I've been doing that over the past week, what God has been showing me is that oftentimes I place so much of my identity in knowledge that I get. As you can see around me, you have all these books, and these are just a few of my books. I have a whole bunch of other books in other places in my apartment. But the temptation for me is to find my identity in this knowledge seeking, in reading all these books, right? So when I do that, what I'm doing is I'm valuing that identity more than valuing the identity of a beloved child of God, right? So for me, I need to renounce that sense of temptation to seek my identity there so that I can use my knowledge to bring glory to God by teaching other people. And that happens when my identity is truly able to come to a place where I'm resting in my identity of the beloved child of God. So when I don't have that solitude, when I don't have that space of silence, then my mind is always working on, okay, what's the next thing I can do? What's the next thing I can do? And if I keep going in that zone, it is difficult for me to stop and listen to God and renounce the things that I need to renounce in order to deepen my identity in Christ. Right? So that's the virtue of prayer in solitude. So it basically has 3 steps. One is you step away from all the distractions and all the actions that you normally cling to. And 2, you make space to listen to God and ask this question, what is the thing that I need to renounce? So that when you come out of that, you're someone whose identity is rested in God, and then you can use your gifts to bring glory to God. And a life without this space of solitude, without this place of solitary prayer, becomes a life that is too busy, and it can become a life that is self-destructive, as Henry Nouwen was saying. Saint Cassian was a monk that lived in the 3rd century, and he said, the highest virtue of all Christian virtues is the virtue of prayer. So my prayer for you is this, during this time of quarantine, that you figure out what is that secret place, what is that space of wilderness in your life, that you can separate away from all the noise and the activities around you, and make space to listen to Jesus and renounce things that need to be renounced, so that your identity gets deeply rooted in the love of Jesus for us. So anyways, that's all I have for today for this theme of cultivating virtues during this time of quarantine. So as you know, I like doing videos on theology, culture, and spirituality. Today's video was more about the spirituality aspect. I'll do another video about something about theology and culture next time. So until I see you in the next video, bye for now.